Commander Taemin's Song stood in the war room deep beneath the Himalayan mountains. The room was huge, filled with computer screens and holographic displays. Maps of the galaxy floated in the air, showing human colonies, alien worlds, and the growing red zones where the Blight Swarm had attacked. 2 weeks had passed since the first attack on New Sol Colony. The red zones had grown much larger. 14 human colonies were now under Blight control. The creatures were spreading faster than anyone had expected. "Sir, we have another report coming in," said Lieutenant Naeon Kang. She was Admiral Choi's assistant, but now she worked directly with the Emergency Command Center. Her face was tired from working day and night. The main screen showed Captain Donghae Seo of the colony ship New Horizon. His uniform was dirty and torn. Behind him, people were running and screaming. "This is Captain Seo from Gamma Colony. The Blight ships just arrived. They're not attacking our defenses. They're going straight for the civilian areas. They want the people, not the buildings." The screen shook as explosions went off nearby. "We need immediate evacuation support. We have 3 million people here and only enough ships for half of them." Commander Song spoke into his microphone. "Captain, help is coming. Hold your position and protect as many civilians as possible." But they all knew the truth. Help was too far away. By the time human ships reached Gamma Colony, it would be too late. 3 million more people would be changed into Blight creatures. Admiral Sang-Ho Choi entered the war room. His face was grim, but his eyes burned with determination. Behind him walked several alien representatives from the Galactic Council. They had come to discuss the human problem. "Show them the files," Admiral Choi told Naeon. All of them. The holographic displays changed. Now they showed images from Earth's history. Pictures of ancient battles, destroyed cities, and weapons of terrible power. The aliens watched with growing shock as they saw humans fighting each other with bombs that could destroy entire cities. "This is from your World War II," Admiral Choi explained calmly. 60 million humans died in 6 years. We built weapons that could turn cities into glass. We fought in deserts, jungles, and frozen wastelands. We never stopped. The next images showed more recent conflicts. The Mars Rebellion, where human colonists fought against Earth's government for 20 years. The Titan massacres, where mining companies used military weapons against striking workers. Counselor Vextar shifted uncomfortably. "These events are ancient history. Humans have been peaceful for centuries." General Jin Wu-bei stepped forward. He was a big man with scars on his hands from old battles. "Peaceful? No, Counselor. We've been controlled. We made rules for ourselves. Treaties. Laws. We decided to be civilized." He pointed at the display showing a Blight-infected colony. "But you see, the Blight Swarm just broke our rules. They attacked our civilians. They turned our children into weapons. They gave us permission to stop being civilized." Dr. Subin Park entered the room carrying a tablet computer. She was the head of the Human Weapons Research Division. Her job had been very boring for the last 100 years. Now she was the most important person in human space. "Admiral, I have preliminary results from our analysis of the Blight creatures," she said. "The good news is that they maintain neural pathways from the original host. The bad news is that these pathways are controlled by an alien signal." "Explain it simply, Doctor," Admiral Choi said. "The people who get changed are still alive inside. Their brains still work, but the Blight creatures control their bodies through some kind of signal, like a radio wave but much more complex." Secretary Yoon Ji-han leaned forward. "Can we block the signal?" "Possibly, but we'd need to study live Blight creatures, and that means going back to the infected colonies." The room fell silent. Going back to the infected colonies was extremely dangerous. The Blight creatures were fast and deadly. They worked together like a single organism. Worse, they were using human knowledge now. Every person they changed gave them more information about human technology and tactics. On the front lines, Sergeant Donghyun Im was learning this the hard way. His squad had been sent to Delta 2 Colony to rescue survivors. What they found was a nightmare. "Control, this is Rescue Team 7, he spoke into his radio. "The colony is completely transformed. The buildings are alive. They're moving and changing shape as we watch." His squad moved carefully through what used to be the main street of Hanseong City. The buildings were covered in the same gray living metal they had seen at New Seoul. But here, the transformation was more complete. The metal had grown into new shapes, creating twisted spires and impossible geometries. "Sergeant, look at this," called Private Minji Cho. She was pointing at a group of people walking down the street. At first glance, they looked normal, but their movements were too coordinated. They all walked at exactly the same pace. They all turned their heads at the same time. Those used to be colonists, Sergeant Im whispered. Now they're scouts for the Blight. The changed humans suddenly stopped walking. As one, they turned to look directly at the hidden rescue team. Their eyes glowed with a cold blue light. "Run," Sergeant Im ordered. The squad ran through the twisted streets while the changed humans followed them. More creatures emerged from the living buildings. Some looked like mechanical spiders made of flesh and metal. Others were humanoid but wrong, with extra arms and legs in places where they shouldn't be. "This is Rescue Team 7. We need immediate extraction. The colony is completely hostile. No survivors detected." Back in the war room, Admiral Choi received the report. "Another colony lost. Another 3 million people changed into enemies, sir," Commander Song said quietly. "At this rate, the Blight will have converted every human colony within 6 months. We need to act now." Admiral Choi nodded slowly. He looked at the alien representatives. "Counselors, I'm afraid your services are no longer required. This is now a human military matter." "Admiral, you must understand," Vextar began. "The Blight swarm is too powerful. Resistance will only make things worse. If you surrender peacefully—" "Get out," Admiral Choi said quietly. "I beg your pardon." "I said get out. Leave this room. Leave this planet. Go back to your council and tell them that humanity is no longer interested in galactic law." The alien representatives looked shocked. For 300 years, humans had followed galactic protocols. They had been polite, cooperative members of the galactic community. "Admiral, you're making a terrible mistake," Vextar warned. "The council will not tolerate—" General Bay stepped toward the aliens. His hand rested on his weapon. "The Admiral gave you an order. Leave now or we'll show you what humans do to people who threaten our families." The aliens left quickly. When they were gone, Admiral Choi activated the room's security systems. Now no one outside could hear what was said inside. "Ladies and gentlemen, what I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest level. For the past 200 years, human military researchers have been developing weapons in secret, not because we wanted to use them, but because we wanted to be ready if someone like the Blight Swarm ever appeared." Dr. Park activated a new display. It showed designs for ships, weapons, and battle tactics that made everyone in the room go quiet. "We call it the Arsenal of Last Resort," she explained. "These are weapons designed for one purpose, to completely destroy an enemy. No capture, no negotiation, no mercy. Total elimination." The designs were terrifying. Ships that could crack planets, viruses that could rewrite alien biology, bombs that could destroy entire star systems. "Why haven't we built these weapons?" asked Commander Song. "Because we hoped we'd never need them," Admiral Choi replied. "But the Blight Swarm has changed everything. They've turned our own people into weapons against us. They've forced us to choose between extinction and becoming something we promised ourselves we'd never be again." Secretary Han stood up. "The choice is made then. Begin production immediately. How long will it take?" 6 weeks for the first wave of new weapons," Dr. Park replied. 3 months for the complete arsenal." "We don't have 3 months," General Bay pointed out. "At current expansion rates, the Blight will reach Earth in 8 weeks. Admiral Choi smiled grimly. "Then we'll have to slow them down. Alert all remaining human colonies. Full military mobilization. Every civilian ship becomes a transport. Every mining laser becomes a weapon. Every human becomes a soldier." He paused and looked around the room. "And send a message to every human colony, every human ship, every human settlement in the galaxy. Tell them the truth about what's happening. Tell them what the Blight Swarm does to our people." "What's the point of that, sir?" asked Nayan. "Because when humans get angry, really angry, we stop thinking about rules and start thinking about revenge. The Blight Swarm thinks they're fighting against peaceful colonists. They're about to learn they've declared war on the descendants of the people who invented the concept of total war." On the colony ship New Horizon, Captain Seo received the new orders. Around him, his crew was loading weapons and preparing for combat. These weren't soldiers. They were farmers, teachers, engineers, and shopkeepers. But their families were in danger, and that changed everything. "Attention all hands," he announced over the ship's communication system. "We have new orders from Earth Command. We are no longer evacuating." Captain Heejin Ko sat in the cockpit of her new fighter ship. The Widowmaker was unlike any spacecraft humans had ever built before. Every system, every weapon, every piece of armor was designed for one purpose: killing as efficiently as possible. The ship had no cargo space, no living quarters, no scientific equipment. It was a weapon that could fly through space. The engineers had removed everything that wasn't directly related to destroying enemies. "This is Wraith Squadron," she spoke into her radio. "All fighters report ready for combat." Around her, 11 other Widowmaker fighters formed up in attack formation. Behind them, the massive human fleet approached the Blight-controlled system of Kepler 442. This would be the first major battle using humanity's new weapons. "Wraith Squadron, this is Admiral Junho Nam aboard the Vengeance. You are cleared to engage all hostile targets. No restrictions. Repeat, no restrictions on weapons or tactics." Captain Ko felt a chill run down her spine. No restrictions was military code for anything goes. The rules of civilized warfare had been thrown away. The Blight Swarm was about to face humans who fought like their ancestors did, without mercy. "Copy that, Admiral. Wraith Squadron is weapons-free and feeling spiteful." The Blight fleet was massive. Hundreds of organic ships floated around the captured human colony. The ships looked like giant insects made of metal and flesh. They pulsed with sickly yellow light as they moved, but the humans had brought something the Blight had never seen before. Ships designed by a species that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of killing. The first wave of human fighters dove toward the Blight fleet like angry hornets. The aliens fired back with energy weapons that could melt steel, but the human ships were built to survive in the worst conditions imaginable. Captain Ko's fighter shook as enemy fire hit her shields. Warning lights flashed in her cockpit, but the ship kept flying. She lined up her target, a massive Blight mothership, and fired her main weapon. The plasma cannon had been designed by humans who understood that sometimes you needed to destroy something completely. The beam cut through the alien ship like a sword through paper. The mothership exploded in a ball of green fire. "Direct hit on Target 1, Ko reported. Moving to Target 2, but this was just the beginning." Admiral Nam watched from the bridge of the dreadnought Vengeance as his fleet engaged the enemy. The tactics his captains were using would have been considered war crimes just months ago. Now they were standard procedure. Captain Jae-Won Yu commanded the destroyer Retribution. When his main weapons failed to penetrate a Blight ship's armor, he did something that shocked even his own crew. "All hands, prepare for ramming speed," he announced. "Sir?" his first officer asked in disbelief. "You heard me. We're going to ram that thing. Emergency evacuation to the life pods. Anyone who doesn't make it off in 60 seconds goes down with the ship." The crew scrambled to escape pods as the Retribution accelerated toward the enemy vessel. At the last moment, Captain Yu activated the ship's self-destruct sequence and ejected in the final escape pod. The destroyer struck the Blight ship at tremendous speed. Both vessels exploded in a massive fireball that lit up the entire battlefield. 3 more Blight ships were caught in the explosion and destroyed. This was the new human way of fighting. If a weapon didn't work, they became the weapon. If they couldn't win through superior technology, they won through superior willingness to sacrifice everything. The Battle of Kepler 442 lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the entire Blight fleet had been destroyed. Not a single alien ship escaped. The human colony was still infected, but the immediate threat was gone. Admiral Nam stood on his bridge, looking at the wreckage floating in space. His communications officer, Lieutenant Sujin An, approached him with a worried expression. "Sir, we're receiving complaints from the Galactic Council. They're saying our tactics violate the rules of warfare." Admiral Nam laughed bitterly. "Tell the Council that the rules of warfare apply to civilized species fighting other civilized species. The Blight Swarm forfeited any right to civilized treatment when they started turning children into weapons." On the planet below, Dr. Chae-Young-Yoon worked frantically in her mobile laboratory. She had finally cracked the secret of the Blight neural network. The frequency that controlled the changed humans could be disrupted. "Admiral," she called over the radio, "I've developed the neural disruptor. We can sever the connection between the Blight network and the converted humans." "That's excellent news, Doctor. How many people can we save?" Dr. Yoon's face fell. "The neural shock will be severe, sir. Many of the converted humans won't survive the disconnection process. Maybe 30% will live through it." The bridge fell silent. 30% meant that 70% of the converted humans would die during the rescue process. But leaving them connected to the Blight network wasn't really living at all. "Do it," Admiral Nam ordered. Better they die free than live as slaves. The first test of the neural disruptor took place over New Busan colony. The human fleet positioned themselves in orbit and activated the device. A wave of energy swept across the planet's surface. On the ground, the effect was immediate and terrible. Millions of blight creatures simply collapsed as their network connections were severed. The living buildings stopped moving. The organic machines shut down. But among the falling creatures, human survivors began to emerge. They crawled out of the biomechanical cocoons that had imprisoned them. They were weak, confused, and traumatized, but they were human again. Kyungmin Oh was one of the rescued colonists. He had been connected to the blight network for 3 weeks. When the neural disruptor freed him, he found himself lying in a pool of gray slime that had once been part of an alien machine. "I remember everything," he told the rescue workers. "Every moment I was connected to them. I could see through their eyes, think their thoughts. They showed me their plans." The rescue worker, Sergeant Yoon-hee Park, helped him to his feet. "What did you see?" "They're not just expanding randomly. They have a specific target. They want Earth. They think if they can convert the human homeworld, they'll have access to all human knowledge and technology." This news was immediately relayed to Earth Command. The Blight Swarm wasn't just taking territory. They were building toward a final assault on humanity's home planet. Admiral Choi received the intelligence report in his command bunker. Around him, the war room buzzed with activity as officers planned humanity's response. "How long before they reach Earth?" he asked. Commander Song checked his calculations. "At their current rate of expansion, 6 weeks. Maybe less if they accelerate their schedule." "And how long before our new weapons are ready?" Dr. Park looked up from her computer. "The Cascade virus will be ready in 4 weeks. The planet crackers need 6 weeks minimum." General Bay slammed his fist on the table. "Then we need to buy more time. We need to slow them down. How do we fight an enemy that turns our own people against us?" asked Secretary Han. The answer came from an unexpected source. Captain Minho Kim had been analyzing the rescued colonists' memories. What he found gave humanity a terrible new advantage. "Every human they convert becomes an intelligence asset," he reported to the command staff. "While they're connected to the network, they can see everything the blight creatures see. They learn how the aliens think, how their technology works, how their society is organized." "You mean our people were spying on them without knowing it?" "Exactly. And now that we can disconnect them safely, well, relatively safely, we have detailed intelligence about every blight-controlled system." Admiral Choi studied the data streaming across his screens. The information was incredible. Detailed maps of blight strongholds, technical specifications for their weapons, even psychological profiles of their commanders. "This changes everything," he said quietly. "We don't have to fight blind anymore. We know exactly where to hit them and how to hurt them most." The new intelligence revealed something crucial about the Blight Swarm. They were not as unified as they appeared. Different factions within their species competed for resources and territory. Their expansion was driven partly by internal pressure to prove dominance. "They're expanding so fast because they're trying to impress their own leadership," Dr. Yoon explained. "If we can disrupt their command structure, their expansion might slow down or even stop." General Bay's eyes lit up. "Decapitation strike. Take out their leaders and watch the whole system collapse." "It's risky," Commander Song warned. "If we fail, we'll have wasted our best ships and crews." Admiral Choi stood up slowly. He walked to the large display showing the galaxy. Red zones marked blight-controlled territory. Blue zones showed human space. The red was growing larger every day. "We're not going to fail," he said simply, "because failure means the extinction of our species, and humans have never been good at accepting extinction." He turned back to his officers. "Begin Operation Nemesis. Every available ship, every weapon we've completed, every trick we've learned from our rescued people. We're going to hit the Blight Swarm's command centers simultaneously across 12 different systems. Sir, that will require splitting our forces," General Bay pointed out. "Good. Let them think we're desperate and disorganized. While they're dealing with our scattered attacks, our real strike force will hit their primary command center." 6 months after the first Blight attack, the galaxy had become unrecognizable. The careful balance of power that the Galactic Council had maintained for centuries was completely gone. Fear ruled the stars now, and humans were the reason why. Colonel Seojin Lim stood before a room full of alien military commanders. These were beings from dozens of different species, all united by one thing: terror of what humanity had become. The Blight Swarm operates under certain assumptions, he explained calmly. They assume their enemies will fight defensively. They assume other species will try to minimize casualties. They assume everyone follows the same basic rules of warfare. He activated a holographic display showing the recent battles. They have never encountered a species that considers offense to be the only defense worth using. The aliens watched in horrified silence as the display showed human fleets systematically hunting down every Blight stronghold in the galaxy. This wasn't conquest or territory control. This was extermination. Admiral Miran Jian had been promoted after her predecessor died in a ramming attack against a Blight mothership. She commanded the human doctrine now called Scorched Galaxy. The principle is simple, she explained to her fleet commanders. If the Blight wants to consume everything, we make sure there's nothing left for them to consume. The strategy was brutal beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human fleets would arrive at Blight-controlled systems and destroy everything, not just military targets, everything. Planets, moons, asteroids, space stations. Even the stars themselves were poisoned with metallic particles that disrupted Blight biotechnology. Captain Su-Young Cha piloted the stealth ship Shadow Dancer deep into Blight space. Her mission was to deliver Dr. Wu Sung-han's ultimate weapon to the Blight homeworld, the Cascade virus. It's poetic justice, Dr. Han had explained when he created the weapon. The Blight converts our biology to serve them. This virus converts their biotechnology to destroy itself. The virus was elegant in its simplicity. It looked like normal Blight genetic material, but it contained instructions that would cause their biotechnology to consume itself from the inside. Once released, it would spread through their entire network within hours. Captain Cha's ship approached the Blight homeworld undetected. The planet was a nightmare of organic and mechanical structures twisted together. Massive spires reached toward space like the fingers of a dead giant. Ships that looked more like flying organs moved between the structures. Beginning final approach, she reported over the quantum communication link. Target is the central command spire. Virus deployment in 30 seconds. She guided her ship through the alien defenses, using stealth technology that made the vessel invisible to Blight sensors. At the last moment, she released the viral payload and accelerated away at maximum speed. Behind her, the virus began its work immediately. The towering spires started to shudder and collapse as their organic components turned against their mechanical parts. The flying ships fell from the sky as their biotechnology consumed itself. Within hours, the entire Blight infrastructure was destroying itself. The homeworld that had taken millions of years to build was reduced to rubble in a single day. But the humans weren't finished. Commander Jiho Kwan led the extermination fleets, human ships whose only purpose was hunting down the scattered Blight survivors. We're not just winning this war, he announced to his crews. We're making sure it never happens again. Every Blight creature, every Blight ship, every piece of Blight technology must be completely destroyed. The hunt took months. Human ships searched every asteroid field, every abandoned space station, every remote planet where Blight survivors might be hiding. When they found them, there was no negotiation, no surrender, no mercy. Complete elimination. The galaxy's other species watched this campaign with growing fear. They had seen the Blight swarm as the ultimate threat, an unstoppable force that consumed everything in its path. But humans had stopped them, and the methods they used were more terrifying than anything the Blight had ever done. Counselor Vextar called for an emergency session of the Galactic Council. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered in the Great Chamber that had been the center of galactic government for millennia. We must address the human threat, he announced. They have developed weapons that can destroy entire star systems. They have shown complete disregard for civilian casualties. They represent a danger to every species in the galaxy. But when the human delegation arrived, something had changed. These weren't the peaceful farmers and miners who had joined the council centuries ago. These were representatives of a species that had just demonstrated they could eliminate any threat completely. Admiral Insu Park led the human delegation. He had been promoted after Admiral Choi died heroically at the Battle of the Void, ramming his flagship into the last Blight command ship. Admiral Park was younger than his predecessor, but his eyes held the same cold determination. The Blight swarm is extinct, he announced without any greeting or ceremony. Every trace of their biotechnology has been purged from the galaxy. We made sure of that. The alien representatives shifted nervously in their seats. They had hoped the humans would return to their peaceful ways after the war ended. Instead, humanity seemed to have become something new and dangerous. Admiral Park, Counselor Vextar said carefully, the Council recognizes humanity's decisive victory. Perhaps we should discuss new territorial arrangements to reflect the changed situation. No, the word hung in the air like a sword. Ambassador Minji Song, the new human representative, stood up slowly. She was a small woman, but somehow she dominated the entire chamber. There will be no territorial arrangements. There will be no power balances. There will be no management of human space. She activated a holographic display that filled the center of the chamber. It showed human fleet positions throughout the galaxy. Red dots marked human warships in every major star system. You see, Counselor, you made a fundamental error when you catalogued us as moderate threat. You assumed we were naturally peaceful. The truth is, we had simply chosen to be peaceful. The Blight Swarm took that choice away from us. General Yejin Choi, daughter of the late Admiral, stepped forward. Every species that participated in or ignored the Blight expansion now exists at our discretion. We have the power to sterilize your homeworlds before breakfast and be back for lunch. The chamber erupted in angry protests. Species that had ruled the galaxy for millions of years were being told they existed only because humans allowed it. Several delegates demanded that the Council take military action against humanity. Ambassador Song raised her hand, and somehow the entire chamber fell silent. That simple gesture demonstrated human power more clearly than any weapon. But we won't, she continued calmly, because unlike the Blight, we don't consume other species for fun. We have a simple proposition: absolute non-interference with human space, and we'll go back to being the peaceful farmers and miners you remember. She smiled, and that smile was more frightening than any threat. Just remember, when you thought chaos had been unleashed on the galaxy, that wasn't chaos. That was humanity with a really good reason to stop playing nice. Counselor Vextar tried to maintain his dignity. The Council cannot simply abandon its authority over galactic affairs. We have maintained peace for centuries. Your peace allowed the Blight Swarm to turn 50 million humans into living weapons. General Choi replied coldly. Your authority gave them permission to attack our colonies. Your system failed when we needed it most. Admiral Park stepped forward. The old galactic order is finished. You can accept that and work with us, or you can oppose us and learn why the Blight Swarm is extinct. The threat was clear. Humanity now possessed weapons that could destroy entire species. They had demonstrated the will to use those weapons without hesitation, and they had shown they could eliminate any threat completely. Over the following weeks, the galaxy's power structure reshuffled itself around humanity. Species that had once commanded vast empires now requested permission before entering human-controlled space. Trade routes were redrawn to avoid human military zones. The Galactic Council became a forum for discussing human decisions rather than making independent policies. Dr. Hanul Kim, now the galaxy's leading expert on human psychology, filed her final report on the war. Human aggression isn't their natural state, it's their emergency protocol. The Blight Swarm didn't unleash chaos on the galaxy. They unleashed humanity, and the galaxy will never be the same. Some species adapted to the new reality better than others. The peaceful Andromedans, who had always avoided conflict, found that humans respected their neutrality as long as they didn't threaten human interests. The warlike Centaurians discovered that humans could outfight them so completely that resistance was pointless. But everywhere, the message was the same. Humanity had tried to fit into the galactic community. They had followed the rules, respected the treaties, and trusted in the system. When that system failed them, they had reverted to something older and more dangerous than galactic civilization. The Blight Swarm had wanted to consume the galaxy. Instead, they had created a new apex predator. Humans didn't want to rule other species, but they would destroy anyone who threatened human survival. 10 years had passed since the last Blight creature died screaming in the cold vacuum of space. The galaxy had learned to live with its new reality, though learned was perhaps too generous a word. Most species simply tried not to think about what humanity had become. On the rebuilt world of New Sol, children played in parks that had once been biomechanical nightmares. The colony looked peaceful and normal, but orbital defense platforms floated overhead like deadly guardian angels. Each platform contained enough firepower to glass an entire continent. Captain Minho Kim, now retired from active military service, sat in a small cafe overlooking one of these peaceful parks. His hair had gone gray during the war years, and his hands bore scars from battles he preferred not to discuss. A young journalist named Yoram Seo had asked to interview him about the war. "What was it really like?" she asked, her recording device sitting on the table between them. "The history books make it sound so clinical. Strategic decisions, tactical victories. But what was it like for the people who fought?" Captain Kim sipped his coffee and watched the children playing. They laughed and ran without any fear. They had no idea that their playground had once been covered in writhing alien flesh that used to be their grandparents. "You have to understand something about humans," he said finally. "We're not naturally violent. We don't enjoy war the way some species do. But when someone threatens what we love," he paused, searching for the right words, "we become very good at making problems disappear permanently. The weapons humanity developed during the war, doesn't that concern you? The planet crackers, the Cascade virus, the ability to sterilize entire star systems?" Captain Kim nodded slowly. "Of course it concerns me. Any sane person would be concerned about weapons that can crack worlds in half. But you know what concerns me more? The fact that we needed them." He pointed at the children in the park. "My granddaughter plays there every day. Before the war, this exact spot was covered with blight creatures that used to be human children. They were still alive inside those things, screaming silently while their bodies were used as weapons against their own families." The journalist looked uncomfortable, but surely there could have been a diplomatic solution. "Diplomacy?" Captain Kim's voice became cold. "We tried diplomacy for 3 centuries. We followed every rule, respected every treaty, trusted in every institution the galaxy created, and when we needed protection the most, the Galactic Council handed us over to monsters." He stood up and walked to the window. Outside, a human patrol ship passed overhead, its weapons clearly visible beneath its hull. The blight swarm learned something important about humanity, and so did everyone else. "We're not the most advanced species in the galaxy. We're not the oldest or the wisest. But when you threaten what we love, we become the most dangerous thing in the universe. Humans with nothing left to lose." The interview was interrupted by a soft chime from the cafe's communication system. A news bulletin appeared on the wall screen. Another species, the hegemony of Vask, had been discovered developing biological weapons similar to blight technology. Captain Kim and the journalist watched as the news anchor reported that human fleets were already moving toward Vask space. The response would be swift and absolute. "Will you go back to active duty?" Yoram asked quietly. "No, I've done my part. But there are younger humans who remember what the blight did to us. They'll handle this." Indeed, Admiral Hyunwoo Shin was already briefing his fleet commanders aboard the dreadnought Never Forget. The briefing room was filled with officers who had been children during the blight war. They had grown up in a galaxy where humanity's enemies became extinct. Intelligence. Reports confirm that the Vask have been experimenting with neural control technology, Admiral Shin announced. "The same type of technology the blight used to convert our people." The room grew very quiet. Every officer present had lost family members to blight conversion. The idea that another species might try to develop similar weapons was intolerable. "What are our orders, sir?" asked Captain Dayon Park. "Complete elimination. We're not taking chances this time. The Vask civilization ends today." The battle, if it could be called that, lasted 3 hours. The Vask had been confident in their defenses, but they had never faced weapons designed by humans who considered overkill to be a starting point rather than a limit. The Cascade virus, refined and improved over 10 years, turned every piece of Vask biotechnology against itself. Their living cities consumed themselves. Their organic weapons began attacking their own ships. Within minutes, the Vask war machine was destroying itself from the inside. But the humans weren't satisfied with just military victory. They wanted to send a message that would echo across the galaxy for the next 1,000 years. Commander Seon-ho Yoon led the final assault on the Vask homeworld. His troops moved through the capital city with methodical efficiency. Not a single piece of Vask technology was left intact. Not a single research facility survived. "This is for New Seoul," he said as his engineers destroyed the last Vask laboratory. "This is for New Busan. This is for every human child you would have turned into a weapon." When the operation was complete, the Vask homeworld was uninhabitable. not destroyed. Humans had learned that destroying worlds was wasteful. Instead, every trace of their civilization had been systematically removed. The planet would remain as a monument to what happened to species that threatened humanity. News of the vast elimination spread throughout the galaxy within hours. The reaction was swift and predictable. Every species with questionable research programs immediately shut them down. Every government that had been considering aggressive action against their neighbors suddenly found diplomatic solutions. The Galactic Council, what remained of it, issued a formal statement condemning human actions as disproportionate. The human response was delivered by Ambassador Tai Hyung Lim, Admiral Park's successor. Disproportionate? He asked the assembled representatives. The Vask were developing technology to turn other species into slaves. We eliminated that threat permanently. I'd call that proportionate to the crime they were planning. Councillor Vextar, now much older and more careful in his words, tried to maintain some semblance of authority. The Council has a responsibility to maintain order in the galaxy. We cannot allow any single species to act as judge and executioner. Ambassador Lim smiled politely. Counselor, you had 300 years to maintain order. You failed catastrophically when we needed you most. Now humanity maintains order. The difference is that when we identify a threat, we eliminate it completely rather than negotiating with it. The truth was undeniable. Since humanity had taken control of galactic security, there had been no major conflicts, no genocidal campaigns, no species-ending threats, not because other species had become more peaceful, but because they all knew what would happen if they stepped out of line. Dr. Era Shin, daughter of the late Dr. Park who had developed the first anti-blight weapons, published a study on the new galactic order. Her conclusions were sobering. Humanity has created peace through superior firepower and demonstrated willingness to use it. We have become the galaxy's immune system, eliminating threats before they can spread. The cost of this peace is that every species now lives knowing they exist only because humans allow it. Some philosophers argued that this was tyranny. Others pointed out that it was effective tyranny, which was more than the old system could claim. The Galactic Council had maintained peace through complicated negotiations and careful balance. Humanity maintained peace by making war too expensive for anyone to consider. On Earth, Fleet Admiral Jisoo Kang stood in the same war room where the Blight War had been planned. The room looked different now. Instead of desperate plans for survival, the walls displayed monitoring stations throughout the galaxy. Humanity watched everything, ready to respond to any threat. Status report, she ordered her aide. Commander Minsu Oh. All sectors reporting normal, Admiral. No unusual activity detected. The Vask incident seems to have sent the intended message. Admiral Kang nodded. The Vask incident would be remembered for centuries, not because of its military importance, but because it demonstrated that humanity's response to threats had not softened with time. Any word from the archaeological teams? Yes, ma'am. They've confirmed that the Blight Swarm was not native to our galaxy. They came from somewhere else, probably fleeing something even worse. This was disturbing news. If the Blight had been refugees from some greater threat, what did that say about what might still be out there in the vast darkness between galaxies? Double the watch on all outer systems, Admiral Kang ordered. If something scared the Blight Swarm badly enough to make them run, I want to know about it before it arrives here. The truth was that humanity had not become complacent in their dominance. The Blight War had taught them that the universe was full of things worse than their nightmares. The galaxy might be safe now, but the galaxy was just one small corner of a much larger and more dangerous universe. In the rebuilt cities of former human colonies, memorial walls listed the names of those who had been converted by the Blight. 50 million names representing 50 million people who had died as slaves in their own bodies. These memorials served a dual purpose. The massive alien ship appeared over Seoul without warning. One moment the sky was clear and blue, the next moment a giant shadow covered the entire city. The ship was so large that people had to crane their necks just to see from one end to the other. Similar ships appeared over every major city on Earth at the exact same time. Dong-ho Kim was eating lunch in the underground military command center when all the alarms started screaming at once. He dropped his chopsticks and ran to the main control room. Dozens of officers were shouting reports and pointing at screens that showed the alien vessels. Sir, we have 17 confirmed ships over our major cities, reported Lieutenant Hai Jin Park. her fingers flying over her communication console. They're all the same size. Each one is roughly 10 kilometers long. Dong-ho stared at the main screen. The ship oversoul looked like a massive metal whale, dark gray and covered in strange markings that seemed to glow with their own light. Smaller ships moved around it like tiny fish around a shark. Any communication from them? Dong-ho asked. Nothing yet, sir, but we're picking up massive energy readings. These ships have enough firepower to level entire continents. Dr. Yoon Soo-yang burst into the command center, still wearing her lab coat. She had been studying alien biology for the past 3 years, ever since first contact. Captain Kim, I need to see those energy signatures right now. Yejin transferred the data to Yoon Soo's screen. The doctor's face went pale as she read the information. These aren't just warships, she whispered. These are planet killers. I've seen this technology before in the consortium records. Before anyone could respond, every screen in the command center flickered and changed. The face that appeared was not human. It had scales instead of skin, yellow eyes like a snake, and teeth that looked sharp enough to cut metal. When it spoke, its voice was cold and emotionless. People of Earth, the alien said. I am Admiral Kelvox of the Saurian Empire, speaking for the Galactic Consortium. You have been judged. The creature paused, letting its words sink in. Around the command center, everyone stopped what they were doing to listen. For the past 3 years, we have watched your species. We have seen your violence, your refusal to follow proper order, and your dangerous ideas about freedom. You spread chaos wherever you go. You free slaves that should remain slaves. You share technology that should be controlled. You refuse to accept your place in the natural order of the galaxy. Dong-ho clenched his fists. He remembered the first meeting with the consortium 3 years ago. They had seemed friendly at first, but their idea of friendship meant humanity had to follow their rules completely. No questions, no changes, no freedom to choose their own path. The consortium has voted, Admiral Kelvox continued. Your species is too dangerous to be allowed to spread beyond this single planet. We offer you one chance for mercy. You have exactly 72 hours to surrender completely. Disarm all your weapons. Destroy all your spaceships. Submit to consortium authority forever. The alien's yellow eyes seemed to look directly at each person watching. If you refuse, we will use our planet crackers to break your world apart. Every human will die. Your cities will burn. Your oceans will boil. Nothing will remain but dust and radiation. The screen went dark, leaving the command center in shocked silence. Woo Jin Lee was the first to speak. The chief engineer had been working on secret projects for years. Projects that most people didn't know existed. Captain, we need to contact the other sites immediately. What other sites? Dong-ho asked, though he had a feeling he knew the answer. The sites we've been preparing for exactly this moment, Woo Jin said quietly. Across the city, So-Young Choi sat in her laboratory, staring at the data streaming across her computers. As one of Earth's best quantum physicists, she understood what the aliens had just threatened better than most people. Planet crackers were real. She had seen the evidence of 12 other worlds that had been destroyed by the consortium. Her hands shook as she typed commands into her computer. She was looking for something specific in the alien transmission, something hidden in the quantum signature of their communication signal. There, she whispered to herself. I knew it. She picked up her secure phone and called the command center. Captain Kim, this is Dr. Choi. I need to speak with you immediately. The aliens made a mistake. They used the same quantum frequency for their ultimatum that they used to destroy the Kepler system last year. What does that mean? Dong-ho asked. It means I can track their main weapon, and if I can track it, maybe we can find a way to stop it. In orbit around Earth, the consortium fleet settled into position. Admiral Kelvox stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking down at the blue and green planet below. 17 different alien species served under his command, all united in their belief that humans were too dangerous to live. Admiral, reported his second-in-command, an insect-like creature with multiple arms. The humans are broadcasting emergency signals across their planet. Their leaders appear to be meeting. Let them meet, Kelvox said with a sound that might have been laughter. Let them plan and scheme and hope. In 72 hours it will not matter. We have done this 12 times before. The result is always the same. He turned to his weapons officer, a being made of living crystal. Begin charging the planet crackers. I want them ready to fire the moment their time runs out. Back on Earth, Dong-ho gathered his team in the deepest part of the bunker. The room was small and cramped, but it was the most secure place on the planet. Besides himself, only 5 other people knew what they were really preparing for. The time has come, he said simply. Operation Final Stand begins now. Heejin nodded and began typing rapidly on her keyboard. Around the world, similar messages were being sent to hidden facilities. People who had been waiting for 3 years finally received the signal they had been expecting. Yunsu pulled up files on her computer, files that showed detailed information about every alien species in the consortium fleet. I've been studying their weaknesses for years, she said. The Saurians are vulnerable to certain frequencies of sound. The crystal beings can't handle rapid temperature changes. The insect species have problems with electromagnetic pulses. Can we use that against them? Dong Ho asked, not directly. But if we can get close enough to their ships, we might be able to cause some damage. So Young entered the room carrying a large metal case. Captain, I've finished the calculations. The quantum resonance weapon is ready for testing. But we only get one chance. If it doesn't work, we'll have revealed our position for nothing. Wu Jin looked up from his engineering console. The hidden facilities are reporting ready status. All weapons platforms are operational. The stealth ships are in position throughout the solar system. We've been preparing for this day for 3 years. If we're going to make our move, now is the time. Dong Ho looked around the room at his team. These people had worked in secret, sacrificing everything to prepare for this moment. The rest of the world thought Earth was defenseless. The aliens certainly thought so. But they were all about to learn just how wrong they were. Send the message to all facilities, Dong Ho said. Tell them to begin Phase 1, and prepare to transmit our response to the consortium. What should our response say? Heejin asked. Dong Ho smiled grimly. Tell them that they have sealed their fate. Above them, the alien ships continued their silent watch, confident in their overwhelming power. They had no idea that humanity had been preparing for this war since the day of first contact. They had no idea that every diplomatic meeting had been a chance to gather intelligence. They had no idea that the primitive humans had spent 3 years building weapons specifically designed to destroy consortium ships. The countdown had begun, but Earth was not planning to surrender. Humanity was planning to fight back.